Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Culture Binge, the Wisecrack podcast, where we get all up in that cultural zeitgeist. I'm Michael, and joined, as always, by Wisecrack writer Serby. Serby, how are you this fine morning?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Good. And the Tony Stark of the Wisecrack cinematic universe, Alec. Alec, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, as always, we have lots to get into. We'll talk a little bit about the hell or the joy or the pain of working remotely. We're going to get into some recent drama around OnlyFans. And then we'll talk a little bit about how listening to new music can make your brain stronger. But first, we need to start by talking about the little things that are either bringing lots of joy or mounds of pain to our life, slaps and chaps. Serby, as always, let's start with you. What is slapping and chapping these days for you?
So what slaps is R&J toffee. So that's
R&J toffee?
Yeah, it's not sponsored. This slap is not sponsored by R&J toffee, but I'm about to go into a really deep love letter to R&J toffee. It's a family-owned confectionery based in Northern California, and they have the best toffee. It's so delicious. It has the most incredible texture and flavor. When my friend had knee surgery last year, I sent her some toffee, and she couldn't get over how buttery and delicious it is. And I had completely forgotten about them until last week when I received a marketing email saying that their online store is open. And I was like, oh my God, rjtoffees.com. So anyway, if you like toffee as much as I do, check out rjtoffees.com. And I really want to support them because
sounds super sponsored.
It sounds sponsored, but it's not. But I really want to support them because they have the best toffee, and because of the pandemic, I'm afraid that they're gonna close up shop, and it fills me with sadness. And I'm like, no.
We've already got 2 emails from longtime listeners that say that because of the ingrained sponsored content, they will no longer be listening to the show. So good job.
I only want to be sponsored by KLM. And then what chaps is West Coast is on fire.
Yeah. 2020, hell of a ride.
Yeah, it does.
That's so much fun. Well, nothing else to say about that won't get super depressing. Alec, what is slapping and chapping for you?
This is an easy one, but thank you, Rapid Pulley, for donating. Says, we love your content. Don't know who we is. Maybe it's a joint donation. What slaps is a while ago, I bought a Kobo, which is an e-reader. It's a knockoff Kindle, whatever you want to call it. And I've just been somehow it's gamified my brain until I'm reading 1,000% more than I've ever read. I've got 18 books on my Overdrive hold list at the library. And I'm just fuck, I have to read all these books before they expire because then I'll have to wait again. And it's somewhat addictive, but also I've just learned a lot. So hooray for ebooks.
And you find yourself able to keep up with that. You're not getting overwhelmed by all of the options and not reading anything at all.
No, because no, I have a very long wait list that is slowly sort of coming in. And there will be times where it's I don't have time to read that book. I'm not reading it. But I think there's 3 or 4 things. If I read 2 of them before the 2 weeks expires or the 3 weeks expires that I have to read it, I will be very proud of myself. What chaps? I actually forgot. What did I write? Oh, I still haven't won a single fucking game of Fall Guys. That hurts my feelings.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about it, but I've watched you play it twice, and you're good, but it seems like at the end stages you always kind of struggle a bit and get a little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
I will just say, if you do want to ever watch Alex play Fall Guys, this is not sponsored content, but we've been doing these live stream hangouts on our Patreon where Alec plays Fall Guys and the rest of us talk about stuff we're working on. So, join our Patreon, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so slaps and chaps for me. Slaps, this might be a little too earnest, but I don't know. I felt warm inside this weekend because I experienced some people helping people type stuff. Because of fires and heat waves where I live, got to about 115 on Sunday. And I went out to, there's an organization in Los Angeles I like a lot that was giving out both water and setting up a tie-dye shirt station. 2 things I love, helping people with water and tie-dye. Giving you water, frozen water bottles to give out to people that are unhoused in the neighborhood. And while going out and giving waters to people, I kept running into other groups that were overlapping. So it was the problem of too many people in my area of Los Angeles that wanted to go out and like help their neighbors who were trying to stay alive in 115-degree heat. And it made me feel good. Just that at least, I mean, it felt bad that there was 115-degree heat and people have to live outside. Felt good that people were helping people. So that was good. Chaps wise, I'm going to go hyper specific here. I had a list of chaps because that's how negative I am. But the one I'm going to pick is one of my favorite places in the world, a restaurant in the Koreatown neighborhood of Los Angeles called Beverly Soon Tofu House, a place that was featured on one of the first LA episodes that Anthony Bourdain ever did, announced 2 days ago that they are closing down for good. They've been operational for around 30 years. They're the first people that brought a certain type of Korean soup dish to Los Angeles, and it's one of the first places, I think the first place I ever ate at in the Koreatown neighborhood of Los Angeles, a neighborhood that I don't want to say changed my life, but has been very important to me and has been a gateway into me getting interested in learning about both the food and the culture in general of Korea. So it just bums me out, and in general, it bums me out that we're hearing more and more about restaurants and businesses closing down because of COVID-19, and it sucks. And while it's not our personal responsibility to keep stuff open, I'm just like, if you have the money to do it, get some food from struggling restaurants that you'll like a lot. I don't know. And let's like not eat at chain restaurants because they're going to be fine. Sorry, that was too much. Go to Taco Bell, I guess. But that's that for me.
I'm really sad to hear about the restaurant.
Yeah, the only hope is the daughters of the woman who originally started it said they're not closing off the possibility of one day reopening. So fingers crossed. And if you do live in Los Angeles, I think they're for another week or two, you can still take out from them. So why not? But it might be too sad. But speaking of supporting workers and businesses that are struggling right now, giving money directly to the people who are giving food and content to you, Serby, you're going to talk to us a little bit about some recent drama in OnlyFans. On OnlyFans. And maybe when we get into this as well, I'll ask you that you give everyone a rundown of what OnlyFans is, just in case they're not familiar with it.
Yeah.
Here's a question. If you're not chronically on Twitter, like, do I know about OnlyFans because I'm chronically on Twitter, or do most people know about this?
I don't know about it.
Well, now you do.
Now I do, but I didn't know about it. And I am on Twitter.
But chronically so?
Yeah, like where it's like a neurological defect of your personality.
Quite often. Although I don't follow a lot of people, so that's a possibility that I just.
Well, then tell us what you've recently learned about OnlyFans.
Okay, so first of all, I need to create an account. That's what I've learned. But also, I've learned that OnlyFans is a subscription-based content website where fans can subscribe to exclusive content made by their favorite creators. And anyone can upload their content and monetize their influence. So, like, if you write, if you're an artist, whatever you do, you can upload your content. And since the beginning of the pandemic, OnlyFans has skyrocketed in popularity for a couple of reasons. One, it is natural that people are looking for entertainment because there's nothing else to do. And two, many people have lost their jobs due to COVID-19, so they're looking to earn some money. And the platform is especially popular with sex workers because they can set boundaries, they can work in a safe environment, they can get to know their clients on their terms, and they can work to destigmatize sex work. So all in all, it's great. Sex workers found a safe place to work, and now they have a primary source of income that is reliable. And before Joy, our wonderful producer, suggested this topic, I hadn't heard of OnlyFans or Bella Thorne. And for those of you who don't know, Bella Thorne is an actress and model, and she was on a Disney Channel show. So recently, everything went to shit because Bella Thorne messed up OnlyFans by joining the site. She made $1 million in one day and posted pictures of herself in a bikini. She was eating a hot dog, and sex workers were understandably upset about her joining the site because she's a celebrity. She's well known. She has other revenue streams available to her.
And is it important to note here, too, that I think that Bella Thorne implied she was going to post a nude at a $200 level? Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
So the real problem came in when she said that she had a pay-per-view image that was a fully nude image, and she listed it for $200. So people forked over $200 expecting a nude image of her, but what they received was a picture of Bella Thorne in her lingerie. So everyone requested refunds. And side note, Bella Thorne has released her nudes in response to an extortion attempt. So they're out there for free. People didn't need to pay $200 for them. But anyway, so during this public outcry, OnlyFans decides to change its transaction terms. So they lengthen the payout time from 7 days to 30 days. They place a limit on the amount that fans can tip a creator. And they also placed limits on the pay-per-view prices, because before you could set your own price. So OnlyFans denies that it changed the transaction terms based on the Bella Thorne experience, but I mean, I think the average reasonable person can assume that that's not true. So the effects of this are quite detrimental to sex workers. They will make less money and not be paid as quickly. They no longer have the autonomy in setting their own prices. They can't rely on this as their primary source of revenue. And Bella Thorne issued an apology saying that she joined OnlyFans to, quote, remove the stigma behind sex work, and the negativity that surrounds the word sex itself by bringing a mainstream face to it. And she also said she wanted to do research for a film about sex workers. So all in all, we all hate Bella Thorne. She angered the sex workers, and we can't stand for that. Anyway, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think one thing that's interesting too is she said the film she was working on, and I feel bad, I forget the filmmaker's last name. It's Sean something. It's the filmmaker who made Tangerine and the Florida Project, who's like, and if anything, this is a person who's made films in the past that have featured and highlighted like actual sex workers, in particular the movie Tangerine. And she said that it was to research a movie she was gonna make with him, and then as soon as this all happened, he put out a statement that was like, don't put this on me. We maybe had a conversation once, but I'm not making that movie, and I would never do this to like hurt sex workers. But in general,
his response was actually like really cut her down, and so he basically was like, I spoke to her about creating a film in the far future, and suggested she research sex workers and talk to sex workers in a way that doesn't harm them. Like, he was very specific and was like, I did not tell her to do this.
But yeah, I think pretty simply, right, this just like sucks. And it's another example of this problem recently where it's higher level celebrities infiltrating like lower levels of entertainment work and content production. And I think in a certain sense, like it's not that far removed from the fact that many A-list actors are now in all the commercials, where it used to be a thing where like there were commercial actors who could make a living starring in things like that. Whereas now, you know, you have like Brie Larson and Matthew McConaughey in commercials for various products. Yeah, I think it just shows a lack of awareness on Bella Thorne's part about the idea that for a lot of people, like you pointed out, Serby, this is how they make their income. And it's a way that they can safely produce content, in particular adult content, that doesn't have to be mediated by like sketchy websites or any dangerous like real life situations or whatnot. So I think it just sucks. And I think it's sort of like a wokeness gone wrong thing too, of Bella Thorne trying to act as if she was uplifting or like normalizing the space, like very presumptuous to say that like, wow, me, former Disney star, is going to like make OnlyFans good. It's like, no, it was fine. Like, it didn't need you. Everyone is having a nice time. It's sort of like when a like big celebrity shows up at like an indie rock concert and they think they're giving it cred, but really they're just killing the whole vibe.
Yeah, I think kind of the woke apology of, I'm trying to lift people up, but the clear cynicism there. And I also think this is something that just happens with sort of powerful people a lot. They do an awful thing. It's like, oh, I was trying to help. And it's like, if you're trying to help, there's lots of ways to do that aren't basically enriching yourself. But I also think like a similar dynamic, and celebrities are a big example, but I think just like powerful people in general, they'll sort of show up to a community, not really care about like they want the community to cohere around them. So whether it's some famous rocker showing up at an indie concert, but I think in more banal ways, like, you know, an actor or celebrity, or just like a CEO of a company showing up at a PTA meeting and be like, listen, kids, I know how to get things done. And, you know, we're going to run this school my way, or we're going to run OnlyFans my way, or it's going to sort of exist around my identity. And it's kind of just like, oh, people like me, I'm important, therefore I should be the vanguard of this thing instead of shutting the fuck up and, taking a cue, like listening to the people on OnlyFans instead of, drawing all this attention.
Also, I took issue with her statement that she was trying to destigmatize sex and the words around sex and stuff. Like, are we living in like 1910? Like, is there a stigma against on sex, and do we need to destigmatize it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the stigma is there, especially around sex work, especially.
Do you think it is though? It's kind of like the generations he's speaking to, because I don't know. I like when I talk about OnlyFans, it's a lot of like Gen Z millennial types who are very active on like Twitter and stuff like that. I think they're not people who are stigmatizing sex work. Like maybe like, boomers and people that wouldn't know of OnlyFans anyways. So
I don't know. I feel like if you go down to like, if someone has a friend, who's like, I want to start working at a strip club or start an OnlyFans, their friends will be like, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like that's, déclassé. That's not for people like us. Or even, I have to imagine there's plenty of people my age or your age or Serby's age who, when looking at a resume or might sort of Google someone that they're thinking about hiring, be like, oh, they used to do this or that. I don't want to be associated with that. I think plenty of it's still there. I think it's dumb that it's there, but I think it is very much there.
Yeah, I quickly briefed at the chat, and I looked at the chat, and I think I saw someone mention this as sort of like a gentrification thing, and I think that's a funny way to look at it as well. Like the gentrification of OnlyFans, something that was, and I know the website has tons of problems inherent, but like the users were enjoying, and now we have to have not an A-list person, but like a Hollywood celeb come in and try to like class the place up the same way that, I don't know, like Starbucks and Jimmy John's come into a neighborhood to like make it legitimate, normally in the process ruining businesses.
I want to also suggest this is the same thing that happened with YouTube. Obviously, there was no sex involved, but YouTube used to be this great space where there was all these cool indie performers. And then YouTube was like, we need fucking American Express's money. So let's get Jimmy Kimmel on here and let's get, basically primetime TV. And now that's what the algorithm wants to push. YouTube has been gentrified, everyone.
Yeah, I think I saw this in the chat too, and I only learned this over the weekend that she has a channel, but I mentioned her when I talked about commercials. Is Brie Larson the Bella Thorne of YouTube?
I don't know anything. I mean, I know
she started a channel.
Yeah. All I know about Brie Larson is she's in Captain Marvel, and people on the internet are mad at her for doing her job.
Wow. Good actor, though. Great actor.
Yeah.
I saw this one actor who created a Patreon page, and that like weirded me out because I was like, why do you need that? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, it was like the time Zach Braff tried to crowdfund a movie, and it was like, dog, don't you have enough Scrubs residuals to do whatever you want? Like, don't make us pay for Garden State 2. But sorry, that's moving away from the topic.
I think it's just kind of gross to me when celebrities try to cash in on these like independent, like websites that try to lift up independent artists who don't have don't have access to things. Like they don't have agents, they don't have sponsors, they don't have things like that. It's like let those platforms exist for independent creators. You can go on YouTube and post like yourself and lip gloss and
100%
sponsored for like $5,000.
And I just think, and in general, it just worries me. Like if we don't have structures for people that are making like not mainstream art, literature, or doing, sex work that's outside of like, the normative flows of capitalism or whatever. If we lose those spaces, everything's going to be the same. Like if we don't have, if we don't have like a website like Bandcamp, then all we have are artists that can afford to get, 0.01 cent per song on Spotify or whatever it is. So it is worrisome, and it's just worrisome too. I think it also is just another sign of how out of touch a lot of higher level celebrities are with how the rest of us live, and how a lot of creative people, make their living.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question. Is there findom on OnlyFans, and can men do it? Can I findom some people? Can I invade the space? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be invading it. It'd be a challenge if anyone in the chat, let us know if you would let Alec findom you. And we're not going to say what findom is. No one can say it. If you want to know what it is, look it up. I mean, you could maybe get there on OnlyFans. I feel like one of the points or the nice thing about an OnlyFans model is that, let's say you have a very niche interest, specialty, ability. All you need is a small group of people that appreciate your thing to, make some coin off of that, which I think is nice. So, Alec, I want to say maybe there is a lane for you.
I want to go through people's credit card statements and shame them. Be like, you spent $30 on Postmates twice a week. Come on. It would really just be like me kvetching about what I find are irresponsible purchases.
Oh, that's pretty low level findoming, man. You got to be like transferring large sums of money and be like, this is what you deserve, you bastard.
Yeah, get off Wall Street bets. Give me all your money and I'll just put it in very safe index funds.
Yes, which then transfer directly into my student loan account.
It's a very Jewish person for me.
Wow. Well, on that note, Serby, any final thoughts on Bella Thorne and OnlyFans?
Wisecrack stands with sex workers.
Shouts.
I speak for myself as the representative of Wisecrack.
Oh yeah, I don't know if anyone knows this. Serby is the pure representative of
Wisecrack. I am Wisecrack.
The spiritual embodiment of the entire brand.
Yes.
So there you go.
Final thoughts, Alec? I have some, well, this is unrelated, but I have some shout outs to people in the chat. Of course, Dude Abides, who says
the best.
Mackinac Island Fudge in Michigan is a good option for your sweets. We also got Dorian Nance, who says, interesting how a bunch of thirsty guys are paying for the girlfriend experience. And Cracked Prince Nez, don't have time to tune in today, but you are a wonderful bunch. Gratitude and love. Thank you so much. Those are such nice things.
That's great. So before we get into remote work stuff, Alec, I gotta say, I saw you move for a second and I noticed something on your shirt. What you wearing, bud?
Oh, I got the new Wisecrack shirt. It's
Whoa.
a little donkey. It's a t-shirt. I actually can't really, I gotta move the thing to make sure that I'm fully.
Show us. Wow, look at that move. Wow. Model.
Yeah, if people want to buy that shirt instead of signing up for OnlyFans, go to wisecrack.store and check it out. It's cool and it's a way to support us. And we won't ruin anyone's livelihood that I know of.
We will not. And yeah, just we'll be showing y'all some new stuff soon. This is sort of a little hint, but a few of us have been working on new merch. It's not coming from some weird corporate headquarters. It's a few of us who are trying to think about what sort of stuff we like, what we think you might like. Alex wearing one of the new shirts. We're gonna have some new stuff coming out, so you can check out the store. Is it just wisecrackstore.com?
No, it's wisecrack.store. We're also working on a mug that the color's a little messed up, but I'm very excited about it regardless. We're gonna fix the color.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh yeah, I should have brought mine.
I'm having a lot of trouble centering it, and it's blue on the inside, and I had to fight Michael about that because he doesn't like inside colors.
I think inside colors in a mug are gross. I don't want it. It's gonna make, if I put coffee in a mug with an inside color, it's gonna make it look murky, and then I'm gonna be thinking, is there algae in my cup? I just want to
wash your cups.
I don't. Who washes their cups? Grow up, Alec.
Okay.
So I know. Well, speaking of not having to wash my cups, because I no longer work in an office space where people can judge my disgusting habits. Alec, what's going on with remote work? How is it changing business, work culture, our lives, all of the above?
So there's this really cool article on Medium by Steve Levine called Remote Work is Killing the Hidden $1 Trillion Office Economy. Previously, I've talked about, just kind of hypothesized about how remote work is changing our neighborhoods. We're not commuting all the time, and commuting is a horrible, soul-crushing experience. People seem more engaged with their communities, maybe. But this specifically is about, basically there's a $1 trillion economy around like serving office workers. Let me double check it's trillion. I'm going to read some things from this article, so I'm not talking out of my ass. But a ton of the economy goes to getting office workers their bacon, egg, and cheeses and their coffee and getting their shoes shined and, business travel and stuff like that. And so here's the first, here's a paragraph from the article. In the 5 months since the coronavirus forced a lockdown of U.S. businesses, economists have focused much attention on the devastation of mom and pop businesses, brick and mortar shops, bars and restaurants, and massive chains. But they have mostly overlooked a looming threat to a vastly larger and more consequential galaxy of businesses, one worth trillions of dollars, Boom, I was right. A year in GDP and revolving around a single, much underappreciated economic actor, the white-collar office worker. It goes on to say, these workers shopped at small businesses like Silva's shoe repair shop, dry cleaners, gyms, food carts, florists, and pharmacies, but they're also among the most vital customers and source of revenue for a slew of larger, less obvious businesses, food delivery companies like Grubhub and Uber Eats, and companies like Xerox, the maker of printing supplies. Amid COVID-19, workwear destinations Brooks Brothers and J.Crew have filed for bankruptcy protection, with Brooks Brothers selling itself last month. And on its quarterly earnings call in late July, Starbucks attributed the loss of some $2 billion a year on the deserted urban office corridors. Other things that have been affected are hotels, airlines, real estate. Businesses are canceling their leases in places like Midtown Manhattan, obviously other sort of business centers in other cities. Restaurants with happy hours. And I can't speak for every city, but I know like Midtown Manhattan is basically nobody lives there. It's only office buildings, and every single restaurant bar there really caters to these people. And it's not like living in the suburbs where there's other sources of people traveling through Midtown there. So I imagine there's other places like that in other cities. But it also just kind of reminded me of David Graeber talks about the service economy. R.I.P. David Graeber. He just died. Yeah. He talks about the service economy and talks about this. There's sort of like an old joke. It's a 19th century joke about an island where people make a living by doing each other's laundry. And the basic idea is our service economy is this to various other degrees, right? We're too busy to do our laundry, so we work and make more money so we can pay people to do our laundry. Or let's say you work at Starbucks, you're serving other people coffee, but on your rush to go to Starbucks, you have to stop at, Dunkin' Donuts to buy coffee. We're just doing these sort of like multi-part process of, servicing each other, not in the OnlyFans way. And I think a lot of our economy, especially the white collar world, is structured like that, in that when we're staying home, I think a lot of people are cooking their own meals, they're making their own coffee. And it's not that the people selling that coffee or the companies doing those sorts of things I don't consider them valueless. I don't consider them bullshit jobs to make someone a breakfast sandwich, but it's like easily this sort of cutout part of the American economy as people are no longer going to the office. So I thought that was kind of interesting. What do you guys think?
So I'm a huge proponent of remote work, and I'm torn because as much as I love remote work and I think that it's better for the environment and better in so many ways that I won't list right now, I also feel like it's sad that there are so many businesses that are suffering. So I don't know. I don't like the idea that there are independent shops that are closing because they don't have people coming in for lunch, that there are the small stores or like the little grocery corner market or whatever. I hate that. So I'm torn. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Oh, go ahead, Alec.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I think there's a part of me when it comes to economic things, right? Like jobs that make us so busy that we need to pay to get our laundry done, to make all of our meals and all that stuff. Like, I think there's a part of me that's like, that is not a dumb part of the economy, but clearly useless in a sense that we're making more money to be able to pay for the things we don't have time to do because our jobs are so time consuming. At the same time that there's the human cost, right? And it's the case of, I don't want anyone to be out of a job who's working in Midtown, but I would say, maybe if there was some social structure, like a universal basic income to like, we don't have to worry about that kind of shit. So like if I ever sound heartless and this sort of thing, it is sort of with that framework of, like there's no reason we need to be paying people to make all of our meals for us. At the same time, I don't want the people to suffer from that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's the, not to get all political and stuff, but when everything gets privatized, it creates more reasons for us to have these random industries doing things that we didn't used to think we needed people to do for us. And then, like you pointed out, Alec, when we have, when we don't have universal basic incomes or job guarantees or whatever, it creates these precarious positions where folks are dependent on jobs like that. So it's really rough. And then I think it just reminds me a little bit of I think there's a Facebook commercial right now about,
oh God.
I think it's real, about a bar called Coogan's in New York. And there's this old Irish looking guy who's running, and they're talking about this bar and how it was a place where everyone felt comfortable, and how if we don't support businesses like that, they're all going to fail. And, it frames the entire narrative as like it's our personal responsibility to save businesses that are failing, completely ignoring the larger economic structures that exist and create these problems. And I think the narrative around a lot of this stuff is really unhelpful right now, especially in so much as it puts the impetus on individuals to fix these things.
Yeah, I have to go get blackout drunk at my nearest bar to make sure that my favorite bartender doesn't end up homeless. What a great system we live in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a small local restaurant group. By restaurant group, they have like 2 places in my neighborhood. And they've done a lot of, during the pandemic, they pivoted to being like a store and a market and having takeout meals and all this stuff. And they put out an email this week that was something like, we're going to be honest with you guys, it's not going well. If you have the money to shop with us this week or order dinner, it would be a big help. And I guess even to touch back on my chat from this week, with that restaurant shutting down, like these things are happening. Also, can people hear the lawn work happening outside my house? Because I feel like I should maybe close a window. If not, I will.
Hey, I can hear it, but it's not very loud.
Okay. Sorry, anyone, and sorry to break the flow of this conversation, but I got very self-conscious about that.
Survey, what do you think?
I feel like almost like physical pain when businesses close, even if it's a large place, like if a Nordstrom closes or like a chain restaurant closes. I feel really bad about that. Not because I feel bad for the corporation, but because of all the people who work there, that they all need to find a new job. So I hate it. That's why I was like puffing up my toffee place so much. But I don't know. Like I work in the tech industry, and a lot of companies are remote. And I've been following a lot in what's happening in San Francisco. Like a lot of, I think Twitter, or was it Pinterest, paid like $70 million to get out of their lease. Mm-hmm. So like the number of employees that work in that building in San Francisco, I can't imagine the impact that it'll have on the local economy. Mm. But then I also think like if more companies go remote, then maybe there are individuals in developing countries who wouldn't have access to a high income role now have access to it because the company's remote. They're hiring all over the world. So like it does hurt the local economy, but maybe it opens things up and makes things more global and gives somebody an opportunity who wouldn't otherwise have that chance.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this before, but I think oftentimes when money and businesses are centered in like a downtown area, for instance, all the money during the day flows there. And so there's really high rents. That's mostly, the large real estate conglomerates that own them. Whereas, I'm sure there's plenty of people who make lots of money in my neighborhood who otherwise would be commuting. And now they're going to go to like the local neighborhood place for lunch that wasn't seeing that. So like it's sort of decentralizing where all the money goes. And a lot of the way our cities are designed are for the sake of centralization. And I think that centralization leads to like a lot of this like very gross stratification of, billion-dollar real estate conglomerates versus, the family that maybe owns a building in my neighborhood.
Yeah. I think what worries me a little bit about this, and this kind of maybe touches on what you were saying, Serby, with Pinterest shutting down in San Francisco or wherever they're in the Bay, this vision of a world where there's like 2 classes of people. The one group that has like tech remote jobs and lives in these like weird high-end apartments that have like co-living and working spaces, and another group of people that spends all day driving around delivering food, groceries, medicine, clothes, whatever. And we just sort of have those 2 worlds where you have like your tech remote job and you sit down all day and your back gets really fucked up because you're not going outside or doing anything, or you're just driving around in the streets all day delivering shit. I think we already see that. Like I've seen a bit of that. I can't say that because it's about my neighbors, and if I have any chance they see this, they'll be mad at me. But I just see a lot of this in my neighborhood and my world where it does feel like there's those 2 worlds forming, and I find that worrisome.
Yeah, totally.
And when the only jobs available, are like Instacart or something like that, and that's no hate on anyone that does that. I have good friends that have worked at Instacart, but it like doesn't sound great, and it doesn't sound like they're treating people well. And I think especially when things were worse in the pandemic, it was just sort of like, wow, there's like a group of people that hasn't had to leave their house because they're sending strangers into like hazardous situations to do stuff for them because they can pay for it. And I guess so maybe I'm being a little dystopian, but the extension of the remote work plus service economy world freaks me out.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. I want to shout out Chris Tomsky for donating, who says,
Thanks, Chris.
Similar issue with recycling. I think he's talking about our responsibility to go get blackout drunk at our bar. Chris says there's a similar issue with recycling. Corporations switch to cheap disposable plastic, then campaign to push the blame onto individuals to recycle. I think that's apt.
Yeah. Also, Alec, why does everything have to be about bars with you? Why is everything about drinking? Sorry.
I don't even.
I know, that's why it's fun.
I'm not an alcoholic like you.
Hold on, I need some more water.
Yeah. What's your topic? What do you want to talk about?
What don't I want to talk about? So I want to talk about music. Not that that's a shock. Anytime I can, I think music and sports are the two things. Anytime I can find an angle for those, I want to talk about it. But I want to talk about something. So there's an article that came out earlier in, the pandemic timeline by Jeremy D. Larson, who I think is the reviews editor at Pitchfork, which kind of sucks sometimes, but they have some really good writers that work there. So, both sides. And then recently they did a podcast episode discussing the article. And the article is entitled, "Why Do We Even Listen to New Music?" And in the article, Larson is making the argument for why listening to new music isn't just interesting at a cultural level. It can have a positive neurological effect on us. On the flip side, it gets into why our brain is structured to reward us in an immediate sense for just listening to shit that we've already heard or things that sound like stuff we've already listened to. And in particular, I think the article is relevant because we're living in a world where a lot of people aren't having a lot of new external stimuli. They're staying in their houses, talking to the same people, rewatching The Office or Community or whatever it might be. And I found it really interesting. So there are a few quotes from it I wanted to get into. So the first is, he says this in the article, when it comes to hearing music, a network of nerves in the auditory cortex called the, I'll probably say this wrong, corticofugal network helps catalog the different patterns of music. When a specific sound maps onto a pattern, our brain releases a corresponding amount of dopamine, the main chemical source of some of our most intense emotions. So one of the ideas there is that as we listen to music in our formative years, we have networks in our brain that when we hear stuff that is that or sounds like that, our brain is like, yeah, here's some of that good stuff. So it sort of rewards us. And the article quotes Jonah Lehrer, who in his book Proust, it's Proust, right?
I think so.
Sorry. Yeah, Proust was a neuroscientist. He says, the essential joy of music comes in how songs subtly toy with patterns in our brains, spiking the dopamine more and more without sending it off the charts. So, we listen to music, it creates these patterns in our brains, and often we'll listen to music that's like slightly removed, so our brain patterns still recognize it, but it adds like a little bit of novelty and kind of keeps us in that realm. But what happens when we listen to something that's completely new is it can kind of break our brain a little bit. And this is another quote from the article. It says, when there's no anchor or no pattern on which to map, music registers as unpleasant, or in layman's terms, bad. If the dopamine neurons can't correlate their firing with outside events, the brain is unable to make cogent associations. We go a bit mad. So listening to music is both creating patterns and breaking patterns in our brains. We have these sort of networks for what we have heard. And that what it kind of gives an interesting explanation of sometimes why we're hesitant to listen to new stuff. On the podcast where they talked about this, someone gave the example of, you're in a car with your friend and your friend's like, hey, I want you to listen to something. And as they play it, they're staring at you like, right. And you're just kind of like, I don't know, like, I guess, because our brain is predisposed to not want to have a pleasurable listening experience. So I'll read like two more quotes. But the article says, the way the corticofugal system learns new patterns limits our experience by making everything we already know far more pleasurable than everything we don't. Skipping ahead, it's that our brains actually fight against the unfamiliarity of life. So our brain is going to reward us for staying within patterns. It's going to almost like punish us or make it hard to push those experiences. So one of the closing quotes of the article, he says, don't let history be recursively defined by a feedback loop. Steer into the skid. Pour the fear and dread leaking through your roof into something unfamiliar, because it could become the new artifact that exclusively defines this moment for you, a new friend who totally loves you for what you've become. So one of the gist of the article ends up being that, what better time than now to listen to new music, to have new experiences, to let this be a time that we listen to new things and don't just fall back into the same patterns, both for our cultural enrichment, but literally for how our brain works. So to you all, I mean, how do you experience, and we could say music or we could broaden this out to other culture, but in recent months, have you found yourselves going back to like comforting classics or pushing the limits with new sounds? What have your music habits been like recently?
I used to really hate 80s music. I thought it was corny. I thought their hair was dumb and just had like a blanket. And this is like 14-year-old Alec that's saying this. But recently I've, loosened up in my old age. And one of the bands that I've always had sort of an irrational association of disliking is the Talking Heads. But I actually saw at a garage sale one of the records and picked it up. It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
What this article really reminds me of, though, is I have sometimes guilty, sometimes not love of like a lot of metal music. And I think metal is like the best example of someone who's never been exposed to metal or just a little bit. They're like, this sounds awful. It is like grating to my ears. And it's because those like neural connections literally aren't made. But as you listen to it more, you're like, oh, this is really good and sometimes weirdly beautiful. And I'm glad at least that like I went through, I think, that painful process because some of my favorite bands now, like Between the Buried and Me is a great example for any like music aficionado. I would definitely suggest looking into them because what they do is like very interesting. But they specifically do like a balance of like very discordant, very like melodic, beautiful things, and like with a lot of technicality to it. But also there's a really great, if anyone else is interested more in this concept, I didn't realize this is what you were talking about, Michael, but a while ago, Radiolab did a podcast episode about this, and they talk about this concept, but also Stravinsky's Rite of Spring.
Yes. The article gets into that really well, actually. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so Stravinsky wrote this piece of music, which is very discordant, very sort of grating on the ears unless you're sort of used to it. I would almost call it like a little proto-metal. And when it first performed, I think the story's true, but maybe it's apocryphal, but the legend is that it started a riot. But their theory to it is like
40 people got kicked out of the theater that night for fighting.
Yeah, and so part of the theory is like, especially, now we're surrounded by a million even if you don't like metal, you've been exposed to metal, you've been exposed to dubstep, you've been exposed to Taylor Swift and Kanye and like all these different things. Whereas like back in the day, if you basically knew like Mozart and Beethoven, people that sounded like that, things that like follow a very specific formula, and here's this sort of in your face thing, Brio basically hypothesized like it was setting their brains on fire and they had to fight it out. I'll put a link to that in the chat in case anyone's interested. I did find it real quick. What do you think, Serby?
So during the pandemic, I've been listening to things that I wouldn't normally listen to. And what's interesting to me is that I feel like any guy that I date, I always feel like I don't like their music, like the music that they're interested in at all. And I'm always like, oh, that again? Like, are we listening to that again? And then I feel like as time goes on, I'm like, okay, I'm into it. So with my last boyfriend, he lives in Europe, so he's really into like, what is it? Like EDM or techno or whatever.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stand it. Like we'd be making breakfast and it's pumping in the back. We're about to go to bed. It's pumping in the back. But now I've been watching live streams of like artists in Belgium, and it's interesting. Like I enjoy listening to it while I work. So it makes a lot of sense to me because I didn't know why I was so interested in it. I was like, is this like a weird like remnant of our relationship where I want to listen to it? But I don't think it is. I mean, I think I genuinely enjoy it now.
Yeah, that's, hey, the benefits of relationships. We can look back on the music we learned along the way. Go ahead, Alec.
Well, this is broader than music, but do you guys, I've been noticing this recently. Sometimes I'll call it like a culture rut where I'm not watching anything new. I'm not even reading anything new. Maybe I'm playing the same video game like over and over again. And I feel like it makes me depressed. And then I'll start going on a weird library binge of books and be like, I feel great again. I don't know if you have a similar experience, whether it's TV shows or books or music or anything like that.
Oh, God, yes. And that's often like one of my first amateur mental health worker pieces of advice for friends who are feeling low-level depressed or in a rut. Sort of like, hey, when's the last time you read a new book or listened to new music or watched a film by a filmmaker you haven't seen before or something like that? And I do think it can shake things up. And like I know in my own life, and this is something I talked about this like over a year ago on Culture Binge. And this is something I think I've mentioned a few times. I've gotten really into the music and culture around the Grateful Dead in the past 16 months or so. And it happened basically completely by accident. Me going to a concert with friends to see some other artists, there being a band that featured one of the surviving members of the Grateful Dead, me hearing this music I never heard before, me like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Then going to a Dead and Company concert, the surviving members of the Grateful Dead plus pop heartthrob John Mayer and some others. But through that, I think like the past year of my life, it's been invigorating because I've been not only learning about like their music, but the music that inspired it and reading books about the history and culture. And that led me to learning more about like the early psychedelic movement and everything around that. And that all came through hearing some new music and music that for most of my life, if you would have been like, do you know about the Grateful Dead? I'd be like, that fucking hippie shit, which was like stupid of me. I fell into this pattern of rejecting that. And it's even the friends who I were at that show, those shows with, shouts to Bear and Felipe. It's been a really cool experience for us to like get more into that music. And I think in general, that's, you know, something I miss so much now is live music, because that's such a great chance to experience something new, where often there's things I'll see live and be like, whoa, what is this? And then listen to it, where I think if someone just sent me the song, I might not be as compelled by it.
Yeah.
And I know guys, real quickly, like things that I can think of besides the music of the Grateful Dead, that I've tried to listen to that's been interesting recently. A lot of more like experimental and hip hop influenced contemporary jazz I like a lot. In particular, the music of this artist Micaiah McCraven, who put out a new record during pandemic. He's a drummer, jazz musician, producer, makes really, really cool music. There's a British guitarist and like producer named Tom, I think it's Mish, Misch, who does like jazzy hip hoppy music, which I like a lot. I also started listening to some more like country folk stuff. In particular, Gillian Welch put out a new collection of older songs, and I haven't listened to that type of music for a while. And the last thing that's been kind of helping expand my brain, I've been reading this book, Plain Changes by Nate Chinen, who's a jazz writer and I think is the jazz critic for the New York Times. And there's an accompanying playlist for the book he put on Spotify with all types of jazz from the past like 40 years. Some of it which immediately I like, some of which I hear and I'm like, this kind of sucks, but I make myself listen to because I trust him and he wrote about it. But it's all been really interesting. And I just think I'm going to probably butcher this, but there was a stat from a study a while ago that was like most people don't like listen to new music past the age of 27. And like that sucks. And I don't want to be that person who, you know, years down the road, I'm still just listening to that. So also, if you're in the chat too, I would love to hear what people are listening to, what sort of stuff that's helped you, you know, expand your brain during this time.
So we got one from Craig Bear who donated, so thank you. But check out Polka Dot Stingray, Japanese math rock, break your music slump. I don't know if he means rock. Mathcore. Is math rock different than mathcore? Because I think mathcore is a version of grindcore, which might be direct.
Yeah, I think they're different. When I think of like math rock, I think of like battles and sort of more like technically precise kind of chaotic music.
Yeah.
You're saying a lot of words I've never even heard.
Yeah. No, I like math rock a lot. But yeah, I don't know. Not that we're here to give anyone advice, but in general, like, I don't know, listen to something new this week. Why not?
Also, if anyone's listening to this in college, I took one music history class in high school and one in college, and they were probably some of the best. That's the only music course I took, and it's like some of the best. Stayed with me, is incredibly valuable, and just in being a human, and like when there's free concerts in the park, like, oh, I recognize Franz Liszt because I learned about him a decade ago, and I understand why he's kind of cool and interesting, and also like fucked a bunch of people's wives, which is also kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I took a literature and jazz class, and all of the texts that we read were inspired by jazz or included jazz elements. And I think my favorite one was Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin. So it's written like a jazz piece. So Highly recommend that.
That's great. Well, yeah, listen to new stuff, read new stuff, and when the world opens back up, take some psychedelics and go see some jazz. I don't know if that's for you. It'll be a great time.
Yeah, and listen to ICP's rendition of like Mishima Marsh, which is a Mozart song.
Do not.
No, it's a classical piece adapted in the 21st century. I think Jack White is involved too somehow. Listen to it.
Oh, and yeah, last shout out. I don't know. Also, I think maybe Song Exploder is a fun thing to listen to. If like you want to get into new music, go check out the Song Exploder podcast. Pick an artist you haven't heard before and listen to them break down a song in a weird way, and maybe that'll help. I don't know. Listen to new stuff and tell us what you like. I'm going to move on. Any final thoughts on this one?
That's all I got.
Great. So before we move into the segment of the show where we beg you to tell us things, write us, call us, and then get into that, quick note, on the last episode, we talked about we got into the question of people returning to Disney parks in the midst of a pandemic, and we ended up like riffing a bit about Disney adults, and we ended up pissing some people off. Quite a few people, I think more than we were thinking. So we just wanted to make clear right now, if you're only watching this because we pissed you off last time and you're waiting to hate us even more, we have no issues with adults going to Disney, who love Disney, who participate in that culture. We are all adults who nerd out about different things, like whether that's Pokemon or music or video games or certain types of literature. We're all obsessed with like obscure cultural shit that we nerd out about. We're not trying to police anyone's fun. We're just having a bit of hyperbolic and sarcastic fun. And I think because we all like riffing with each other, there's times where maybe some of our sarcasm is a little too dry. I know I've been accused in the past of being way too dry in my tone. So we just want to say we genuinely apologize to anyone who was annoyed or hurt by that discussion. And thanks to everyone who reached out to us about it. We appreciate it. Like, let us know if we piss you off. We want to be in dialogue with you. We'd love to hear your thoughts, even when you hate us. And just know, like, we love you more than Simba loves his dead dad. So all the Disney heads, you have a home here.
And like 90%, I think, of the hate was well-meaning and constructive, and I was appreciative of that. And 10% of it was batshit. But it's funny because some of the responses, I was trying to basically not humiliate myself, but like, listen, I'm a fucking dude who likes Pokemon, and it's like not that different. But people are like, you're such a hypocrite. How dare you say that? And so I think that was misconstrued, and maybe I didn't communicate clearly.
If anything, Pokemon's more embarrassing than being really into Disney. So I don't know why.
It's a game about keeping animal slaves. Anyway, I think my whole point, and maybe I also didn't signpost this correctly, was I think there's a level of engagement with any fandom, whether it's Marvel or Rick and Morty or Disney, where a level of engagement and attachment where you're not able to sort of critically look at that thing. And that's the thing that I will always stand by criticizing, right? If you are so enamored by Disney, and this isn't a lot of people, that you can't see the larger structure of like why Disney as a corporation kind of sucks, might be a thing. Or, if I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, things we like can get problematic. Go ahead, Serby.
I was so sad when this happened. I didn't want to do the podcast anymore.
Wow.
I was crying. I was so sad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people are upset, and I contributed to their unhappiness. So I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to say anything that was unkind, and I love Harry Potter as much as you love Disney. So I should have been more compassionate and empathetic, and it served as a good reminder that we say things, and we should try to remember that there are people listening, and our humor doesn't always translate. Our comments don't always translate. And so I'm very, very sorry.
Okay, we don't need to get too apologetic here. We're fine. We're fine. I'm not doing it. I don't stand by that. We did a fine job. Let's move on. And like 50 Cent once said, when haters hate, let them hate, and watch the money pile up. So when you do hate us or when you do love us, we'd love to hear from you. And the way you can get in touch with us is hit us up at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Always no M. I don't know who's at wisecrack.com. They're probably monsters. Culturebinge@wisecrack.co. And then you can call us at 213-534-8807. Once again, that's 213-534-8807. And I know we have a voicemail we're going to listen to, maybe some emails. Alec would know better than I. So let's get into it.
What's up? This is a voicemail for Culture Binge. I just wanted to make some comments on the Disney thing. I was in a dinner group with some millennial folks, and one of the couples hosted a Disney podcast, which is pretty popular, I guess. And I think that in regards to community, I think that there's a lot of cooperating communities within Disney circles, especially people who are like deep into it. I think there's a lot of ticket sharing and information swapping. I don't think it's kind of on like Reddit, subreddits and stuff like that. Like I think there is that, but I think that's more for like, I don't know, fantasy and Rick and Morty stuff, discussion pages. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I think there is a community. I think my issue, this is coming from someone who's who's a Floridian, that my issue is like with Disney itself. I'm a huge Tolkien fan, and the Tolkien estate has their problems, especially with like preserving like this idea of canon. But I think that Disney promotes this weird dominant open canon for like all these different enterprises and IOs and stuff, or I don't know the right term. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Like this open, but only for them so that they can make $1 billion and then cut everyone out. So fuck Disney, but I can understand the cooperating fan communities, and I respect it. Anyway, this is Nick from Nashville. Keep doing what you're doing. Love Culture Binge, love Wisecrack. Many smooches. Peace.
Thank you so much, Nick from Nashville. Smooches back to you, and always nice to hear from another person who got out of Florida.
Yeah.
And yeah, I no nothing to add other than I agree, and that's why I said smooches back to him.
We got a lot of emails, mostly about Disney and alter ego. Serby's topic.
Nice.
This alter ego one, I think it stirred in a lot of people things about furries. And my precursor to the furry conversation is I feel like in my mind, there's two communities that I think started off as like jokes on the internet that I feel like are making a cultural redemption. And those are juggalos and furries. And that's all. I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to read this comment. People can argue with me and hate me on the chat. This is an email from Chris. Longtime Wisecrack fan, love all the shows and podcasts, been planning to write in a few times, but always forget. Serby brought up the topic of alter egos and the benefits of assuming these alternate identities. I have to say it scratches the surface of a very deep piece of the role of identity in the furry fandom. I've been a furry myself for around 15 years, and like many, it was a means to explore an alternate identity as a route to acceptance of being gay. For lots of people in the fandom role, and I don't mean typing, as a character allows them to tackle through issues like sexuality or mental health. It also extends beyond that. Oftentimes they pick a character that represents an idealized version of themselves. Acting out what or who they want to be is fairly effective means to actualize that desire. In my case, I play a bit of a cocky but fun otter that hosts awesome pool parties. I've seen every variation of identity from wanting to be the know-it-all nerd to the dumb but lovable jock. Who'd want to... Never mind. I'll get back to that in a second. No longer fearing the cringe furries being near the bottom of the internet subculture barrel. After all, they can feel confident to branch into other communities often mocked like punk, goth, and otaku. Over time, though, those traits become natural, and if hopefully you are maintaining plenty of connections with friends, colleagues, and family outside the fandom, you adopt the alter ego as an improved part of your identity as a whole. All in all, I've had my alter ego, aka persona, for about half my life now, and I really can't imagine life without it.
It's awesome. I didn't realize that was a lot of what goes into that, and that's really rad now, and it's changed the way I view that, and that all sounds so cool.
I also think not just that community, but like a lot of the more like marginalized communities on the internet are like a good place for like people on the spectrum who are like, oh, I'm different, and also like these people identify with being different, and so that's cool, and I feel safe here and can maybe like do things. But it does. I can't, this person asked me not to read this email, but thank you to this person for writing this email. I got a very long email about like fan fiction and like shipping and like Rick and Morty incest porn and lots of things. And it was a very good email. But I think again, with the furry thing, like there's like gradations of what level of this is like what might be called like a maladaptive coping strategy versus like a healthy one. And so this person used the example of a person on the internet who basically had an emotional affair with their partner because they created like a persona on the internet to act out and had a relationship with someone else's persona. And they're like, it's not cheating, it's fiction. And so that doesn't seem cool. And yeah, be critical of these things, but not be an asshole about them. What are your thoughts on that email?
I I really enjoyed this email. I really want to go to one of his pool parties. I am so supportive of the furrydom. Is that what it's called? The furry community.
Sure.
And I just remembered I need to respond to one of our patrons. We were supposed to talk about furries in a DM. So if you become a patron, you can DM us on our Discord.
Also, a person in the comments noted that one of the guys from ICP, their daughter's a furry, and he, being a supportive dad, went to a furry convention. And
sick.
Yeah, supportive dad.
Supportive
right
parents. Yeah.
All right.
They exist.
Here is an email from, I want to make sure it's the right person, Bria, about Disney. Hi, Culture Binge crew. Before I get into Disney adulting, I just want to say I'm glad that finally somebody said Slack is the worst thing to ever happen. You're welcome. Whoever said that, I think it was Serpy. Okay, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot of emails on this topic, but I'm not here to attack, just explain. I don't like to consider myself a Disney adult, but I am a huge Disney fan. Amongst my friends and I, we consider Disney adults to be people who spend excessive amounts of time or of money on anything Disney related, which is fine. But the worst is those who lose their mind whenever Disney changes something about the parks, mostly themes of the rides, and or those who treat Disney as if it is actually a family company with wholesome values that has everyone's best interest in mind. I'm fully aware of the monopolizing monster that the Walt Disney Company is, and maybe for that you'll think that I'm even worse for staying a fan, but I'm not a fan of the company, and especially not of the new CEO or the recent CEO. I'm a fan of Disney movies, characters, and parks. I grew up going to Disneyland. I'm now in my 20s and still have that love and wonder in my heart. So I do often get emotional when I meet Mickey Mouse or watch one of those live shows with my favorite characters. I also want to speak to what Michael said about it being a kids park, though it's marketed towards family, actually caters heavily to adults. Disneyland itself is still mainly for kids and families, but across the way there's California Adventure, there's alcohol in literally every corner, and there's a few rides that don't have height requirements. The bigger, scarier rides are there. As for Disney World in Florida, Magic Kingdom is their Disneyland, but I quite enjoy damaging my liver at Epcot. The point is, I still feel the magic as I felt as a child whenever I go to a Disney park, and I love meeting my favorite characters and love going on rides. Their shows are especially fun to watch, and the alcohol quite tasty. Yeah, that's from Bria. Thank you, Bria.
Thanks, Bria. Epcot rules. We should have got into that. Epcot rules. You can do the whole walk around all the different countries and get food and drinks at them. And this is going to sound corny, but remember that I spent my formative teen years in Orlando where there wasn't a lot of culture. I learned about Japanese food because of Epcot. I never would have truly had a version of real Japanese food and learned about it if I didn't go to the Epcot around the world thing. But yeah, I think of Epcot as the adult one, and they do a food and wine festival every year where you can go and get all this food and drink and just get real smashed there. But once again, it's not all about drinking. But that's a great email.
The last one comes from Kevin, again about Disney. Hi, Culture Binge crew. In the most recent episode of Culture Binge, the crew discussed Disney adults and the reopening of Disney World during the pandemic. It seems this may have led to some polarized and frustrated reaction from some listeners, and I wanted to share my thoughts. In order to consider multiple perspectives, I'm going to use a dialectical approach. We love that word.
Yeah.
Kevin. Sorry. Michael actually did this when he was discussing how he could see it both ways, but I wonder if this comment was overlooked by listeners reacting to the harsher comments that Michael made. I think so, which I felt were primarily meant as jokes, but perhaps were not understood as such by frustrated listeners.
Love this person.
Disclaimer that I'm trained to be a psychologist, not a philosopher, and thus my understanding of dialectics comes from an approach called dialectical behavior therapy, called DBT. While I might personally find the idea of being a Disney adult stupid, I also think that there are a lot of other childish things that adults can find meaning and enjoyment within. Alec mentioned Pokemon. Serby had mentioned Harry Potter. For Michael, perhaps reality dating shows. For me, I've always recently spent a lot of free time playing Final Fantasy video games since the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I've heard great things. Jared's a big fan. Yeah. Anyway, my main point is in all of this is to say that we like what we like as adults, and sometimes those things are childish and may seem stupid to others. I think it is important for us to, as individuals, to acknowledge these conflicting truths. In some sense, playing Final Fantasy video games is kind of childish and stupid, but it's also been a really positive thing for me that helps me feel better right now. Both of those things can be okay, and I'm not going to get upset at a friend who doesn't find the same level of meaning, enjoyment in these games as I do. If they were to make a joke about it to me, I would do my best to remind myself that they're not trying to be mean or hurtful, just poking fun. Note that this is always easier said than done. So for all the Disney adults out there, we love you, and it's okay to get excited and emotional about your interest in Disney, but I do think it's also important to be able to admit to yourself and others that you're participating in something that's primarily meant for kids and then can thus be appropriately described as childish. Both of those things can be true. I think that this was the overall point made by Culture Binge Crew, so I might not be saying anything new, but perhaps putting this in different words might help people feel a little bit better now. Yeah, I love this email because I think that's what I was trying to. I think Kevin basically said a smarter version of what we were sort of fumbling around, which is that we can both be critical of the things we love and also hold that we love them dearly. Like Disney's an evil corporation, and you still might love the Star Wars franchise that they own. Or I fucking love Star Trek, and the first season of Picard is dog shit, but I'm still going to keep watching it. Or I do lots of things that are dumb and ridiculous, such as playing Pokemon Go and occasionally spending money on it. But I can still like it. Both of those things can be true.
Kevin rules. I'm excited for anyone who works as a psychologist because he's going to be the best. And it's always great when someone can take our rambling 20-minute discourse and be like, oh, cool, here's like the logical dialectical structure of what they were getting at. I really appreciate that. If I could like send Kevin a beer or coffee or smoothie or beverage of his choosing, I would. So thank you so much for that email.
Do we have time for one more, or is it time to wrap up?
We're a little over an hour, but we could just do it and we could cut it later if we need to.
Sure. All right. This last one is from I didn't write their name, but they're going to recognize their own email. Hey, Wisecrack. So last week, Michael talked about a composer that you forgot their name, but they were an insurance agent or something like that.
Yes.
And yeah, a very avant-garde, basically only became well-known after they died. The person wrote and say the American composer Michael couldn't remember was Charles Ivy, and yes, he owned a successful insurance company. He had only limited recognition in his lifetime and composed in his spare time as a hobby, his music being very experimental, employing musical techniques that would become commonplace in 20th century avant-garde music. Regarding your statement that monetizing your art leads to a loss of control and expression, that speaks to my own experience as a musician. For most of the 20s, I played in bands and taught music informally and was eventually able to live on the income. However, when I began thinking of where to go next, how to take my career to the next level, I realized that I have to start making decisions based on what other people, i.e. an audience, want to see or hear. I also began hearing and seeing more of the upper regions of the music business and realized the unpleasant things that musicians do or are expected to do in order to get ahead. I realized that these factors would inhibit my creativity and enjoyment of the music. This is why I became a high school music teacher, because I can help young people make music all day, be paid a decent salary, and pursue the musical projects that I feel have value and not compromise these values based on the need for positive regard from strangers. Hunter S. Thompson sent a letter to a friend that a person shouldn't shape themselves to fit their goals, but rather shape their goals to suit them. I think this is the best summary of success I've come across. Keep making great content. Thank you, anonymous person.
That was great.
That's rad. Thanks for helping me my memory. And also, that's just great, becoming a high school music teacher. I literally last night, hadn't read this email, was talking with my partner about how awesome music teachers are and how it sucks that many schools have gotten rid of them. It's such an important thing. And the work you're doing is rad. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I also, the school I went to had like a very prominent jazz school, and 99% of those people are just music teachers now. And they still do all their cool music on the side, but if you want to go to jazz school, that's probably what you'll be doing. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so thank you so much to everyone who wrote in and called in. And if you haven't done it yet, do it soon. If we made you mad or glad this episode, or if you were able to pick through our incoherent ramblings to get at the logical core of it, like a good German idealist or something, hit us up and let us know at culturebinge@wisecrack.co, no M, or 213-534-8807. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. And the dialogue on the show, whether it's in the chat or in the calls, even if you don't always agree with us, means a lot to us. And we hope you all know that you're a part of this and a part of the conversation. And we hope you stay that way. So we're going to wrap up now. But as always, if you want to find us or yell at us online, you need to know where to do that. So Serby, if someone wants to hit you up and let you know that you're absolutely right about OnlyFans and an ally to that community, where can they do it?
Serby Patel 22 on Twitter.
Yes. Alec, if someone wants to let you know that as the CEO of some, I don't know, like delivery service for contract laborers that you're wrong, where can they let you know?
On Twitter at Wisecrack Alec.
Awesome. And if you want to tell me that the only good music is 90s pop music and everything else is trash, you can let me know at Michael O. Burns on Twitter. And with that said, we'll be back in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for everyone who hung out in the chat during this, and we will catch you then. Bye.
Bye.